Hey everybody, it's GoblinX and welcome back to some more Magic Arena. Today I'll be playing another quick draft of Innistrad Crimson Vow. This month, Alchemy Horizons Baldur's Gate has just launched, and all of the competitive events for the season, the qualifier play-in events, and the Arena Open on July 30th will all be Alchemy Horizons Baldur's Gate sealed and draft. However, for the non-Alchemy players, this is basically your one limited format for the month. This will be around until July 22nd, where they are going to flip it over to Alchemy Horizons Quick Draft as well. So, wanted to make sure to keep some variety on the channel and make sure there's something for the non-Alchemy players to look forward to, so we're going to be playing one or two of these Innistrad Crimson Vow Quick Drafts throughout the month. Without further ado, let's just take a look at our pack 1 and see what we want to scoop up as our first pick. We've opened up a relatively weak pack 1. Innistrad Crimson Vow is a pretty historically bomb-heavy format. A lot of the rares and mythics are just the vast majority of the high win rate cards in the format. And we've just opened up a dual land, so that is a little unfortunate. Even in the uncommon slot, we don't have anything particularly good. These are both just very mediocre kind of role filler cards. They're all just a little too slow for their respective mana costs, so none of these uncommons are anything I'm taking early in the draft either. That being said, we've opened two of the best commons in the format, probably the best black common and the best blue common as the number 1 and number 2 picks. We've also gotten some decent commons in other colors like Heron Blessed Geist, Reckless Impulse, Lacerate Flesh are fine, but Bleed Dry I think is probably the best common in this pack by a little bit. It's very close to Lantern Bearer. This is an instant speed removal spell for only 4 mana that's going to kill anything with -13/-13, and it's going to exile it so you don't have to worry about any graveyard recursion, which is a definite possibility in Innistrad, the land of gothic horror and things creeping out of the graveyard. So Bleed Dry is a really nice removal spell, and it's what I'm going to first pick here, but I don't think it would be straight up incorrect to just take the Lantern Bearer if you prefer the blue-white Disturb kind of decks, because Lantern Bearer, also an incredibly great common, probably the best blue common and one of the most high win rate cards in the set. Very good card, a 1 mana 1/1 flyer that you can disturb for 3 mana to then put an aura onto another creature later to give that creature +1/+1 flying. So really good card to get out there early game, get some chip damage in, great sacrificial fodder, and later in the game, all of a sudden turning your random 3/3 dork into a 4/4 flyer can close out the game pretty quickly. So Lantern Bearer, another excellent card there. I don't want to just not mention, but I will take the Bleed Dry there. Pick 2 here, we have been past a somewhat on-color rare. If we want to head into blue, Runo Stromkirk is not that great though. A 3 mana 1/4 flyer is fine, and when it enters the battlefield, put up to 1 creature from your graveyard on top of your library, and then at the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may reveal that card. If it's a creature card with mana value 6 or greater, you can transform Runo. Very few limited decks are going to be able to transform Runo almost ever at all, which makes it just a very medium, very mediocre kind of role filler, a 3 mana 1/4 flyer that maybe returns one of your better creatures to the top of your library depending on when you draw it. Not really crazy or anything. It's kind of like your average uncommon. It's not anything super great. There just aren't a lot of playable 6 mana or greater blue or black creatures in the format, so I'm not super high on Runo, but it would be fun. We could try to do the thing with it if we really want to. I don't like these uncommons too much, Frenzied Devils or Sanguine Statuette, although Sanguine Statuette is a card a lot of people are pretty high on. I've seen that card across the table a lot. If you have a lot of blood tokens in like a red-black vampires deck, you can trigger this pretty often, as it's just a 2 mana 3/3 if you can trigger it. When we go to the commons here, we've got a lot of pretty mediocre ones, but we do have like Chill of the Grave being a great tempo play, and Flourishing Hunter being an excellent green common that really gets you back in the game late game. Always was a big fan of just casting a bunch of big green creatures in this format because Flourishing Hunter is such a great card for really getting you back into the game after an aggressive deck's been chipping you down on life, so kind of want to just take Flourishing Hunter here. But other notable picks would be like Runo, Chill of the Grave, maybe even Blood Fountain, probably one of the weaker cards though, and then Sanguine Statuette maybe, but I'm going to go for Flourishing Hunter, just the kind of stuff I personally really like to do in this format. And it looks like we've Been passed a very good card for working with Flourishing Hunter. Dormant Grove is a card I've played alongside the Flourishing Hunter in many decks. A 4-mana enchantment that gives you a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control every time you enter combat is already pretty great. And then as soon as you need a 3/6 blocker, just make sure to get something up to 6 toughness. It's a lot easier than you'd think to get a 6 toughness creature onto the board to flip this card. So Dormant Grove has been pretty nice. Just a couple +1/+1 counters on your creatures and then flip a 3/6 vigilance when you need it. This card has just played super well, and I'm a huge fan of it. Once you've flipped it as well, you're giving your whole field vigilance, which is really good with just a bunch of big green dorks like Flourishing Hunter. So absolutely love Dormant Grove here. Pick 4, we're definitely starting to get down to the weaker cards here. We have Apprentice Sharpshooter, which is fine filler. It's definitely at its best in this color pair, so that definitely puts it up a notch for us. The green-black color pair cares a lot about high toughness creatures, as you can see from Flourishing Hunter and Dormant Grove, both caring about high toughness, so Sharpshooter works well with both of those. Generally not that strong, but certainly could be in our deck here, so that's probably going to be the pick for me. Not super high on Sheltering Boughs or Toxic Scorpion, Spiked Ripsaw either. Although we could take Grisly Ritual here. This is a bomb-heavy format. You want to have a solid amount of removal here so that you don't just get demolished by some of the intense rare and mythic rare creatures that can show up. And even planeswalkers that Grisly Ritual can blow up. But Grisly Ritual is pretty slow removal. We do already have 1 Bleed Dry, only 3 cards in. I don't know. Hopefully Sharpshooters wheel later than Grisly Rituals now that I think of it. It's definitely one of these two for me, the Sharpshooter, the Grisly Ritual. I'll go for the Grisly Ritual. I don't know how the bots draft, but I would assume we'll probably see more late Apprentice Sharpshooters than late Grisly Rituals in these packs. Pick 5 here is pretty awkward for us. I'm not a big fan of the green cards in here, the Rural Recruit or the Mulch. Really like Kessig Flamebreather, but we're very far from the deck that uses this card well. The blue-red deck is where this card can really pop off with a lot of non-creature spells. Siphon Essence is a pretty solid blue card in the format, again just because you really want the interaction to deal with your opponent's bombs, and this is a great card to stop a late-game creature or planeswalker from your opponent, so just stop their bomb. Vilespawn Spider is a pretty fun card, and we could potentially end up in green-blue. I think that's probably the closest card to getting ran in our deck out of all of these, so it's probably what I'm going to take here. This is good for the green-blue self-mill deck. A 2-mana 2/3 reach, already great for the mana cost, and it lets you mill yourself every upkeep, and then later creates a 1/1 insect for each creature in your grave. Could spit out a ton of stuff. Just go with the Vilespawn Spider there, but nothing great for us out of that pack. Pick 6 here, we get past the best red common, at least I think. Don't remember 100%, but Flame Blast Bolt's definitely one of the better ones. Very similar to Bleed Dry in that it's going to be instant speed removal that's very efficient for its mana cost. This isn't going to kill everything like Bleed Dry can, but that's because it only costs you 1 mana. But whatever it does kill, you're exiling it as well. Flame Blast Bolt is a great card. Excellent removal at common. This is definitely a sign if we were in a human draft that red is somewhat open. Should be a sign in a bot draft as well, so I'm probably going to take Flame Blast Bolt here. We also see it alongside a Voldaren Epic here, which is a solid playable as well. This is a 1-mana 1/1 that deals the damage to each opponent when it hits the board and gives you a blood token, so essentially it's kind of like a Spirited Companion or Priest of Ancient Lore, one of these little 1/1 or 2/1 creatures that let you draw a card when it enters the board. It's mildly weaker because it's not going to draw you that card until late game when you're flooding out. Then you use your blood and discard a land to draw a card, but it's pretty close. So Epicure has played very well. Fierce Retribution is pretty great here too as well. And if we wanted to just stick to what we're doing, Oakshade Stalker would be solid, but I don't think it's near the quality of Flame Blessed Bolt. Just 3-mana 3/3 or 6/3 during the night. I'm going to take the Flame Blessed Bolt here and speculate on red, hope that that is as open as it's looking here. This pack is pretty much just all fine filler. There's no color that has like the standout best card in the pack. There's another counterspell in blue, and counterspells do play well in the format, so that's fine. And then fine filler creatures like Ridgewolf, Dawnheart Disciple, and Sharpshooter. And Massive Might is a combat trick that's actually played pretty well, but nothing incredibly good to see here. Pick 7, no really clear best card in the pack. I'll probably just roll with Apprentice Sharpshooter or Dawnheart Disciple, because those would fit with what we're currently drafting the best. I think I'm going to take the Apprentice Sharpshooter just because of how well this card synergizes with Dormant Grove and Flourishing Hunter. Scoop that up. Another pack of a bunch of filler rate creatures in every color, so we'll take the on-color filler of Apprentice Sharpshooter. Retrieve is a card that I've tried a few times. I have gotten it to work if I'm really in the self-mill strategy. I think I had this in a deck with like 2 or 3 Vile Spawn Spiders. I think in that deck I might have even tried to play a Mulch, but there are not a lot of decks where this is going to be worth it, because you don't get to treat this as a 3-mana draw 2, you have to treat this as a draw spell you can't really play until like turn 10 or 11, once you know things will have died at that point in the game. It's not a very consistent card, not a very flexible one. Pick 9 now. I'm not going to main deck a Crushing Canopy, although I guess it's one of the more flexible sideboardy kind of cards because of the 2 options to choose from. But I'm still not going to main deck it here, and everything else in the pack is just filler level. Creatures and spells here, filler level removal. Probably just take the Reckless Impulse. It's something that red doesn't get a lot of. It's card draw for red, so it feels the least replaceable if we do end up getting pushed into red with our Flame Blessed Bolt here. Maybe end up green-red werewolves or something. Well, I think the best card in this pack at this point is Chill of the Grave, that pretty solid tempo play there. However, we're pretty far from playing blue. I guess we could end up in green-blue. We could play the Chill of the Grave. I think I'm more likely to end up in green-red with how things are looking right now, so I kind of want to just take Sanguine Statuette, although this is not the color pair where it's going to work great, because we're not going to have enough blood tokens to really turn it into a creature that consistently. We'll really just need to turn it into a creature once and have it trade off with something on blocks. I guess we could take Bloody Betrayal for a little Act of Treason kind of effect. You know, Sanguine Statuette is close to like a red-black-gold card, and we're less likely to be red-black than blue-green, I'd think, so I'll just take Chill of the Grave, plus Chill of the Grave can get played if we go blue-black or blue-red also. Just ends up in more decks than I think the Statuette would. Wow, and now we get another blue card that definitely overperformed in this format, the Cradle of Safety. 2 mana for a flash enchantment aura. Enchant creature control, give the enchanted creature +1/+1 and hexproof until end of turn, but the +1/+1 permanently. This was a fine little way to get a combat trick in your deck and also have a counterspell for removal from your opponent. Cradle of Safety played pretty well. Happy to scoop that up here. Some very filler rate cards at the end. We'll take a blue one. And these cards are not even going to get played, even in their colors. So let's see what we open up in pack 2. Well, we've actually opened up 2 pretty phenomenal, well, 3 pretty phenomenal uncommons, but 2 that are going to be in pretty solid contention for the pick here. We have Child of the Pack, which is going to tie us directly into red-green, but it is going to be quite the powerful card, being able to spit out 2/2 tokens for 4 mana, and if this flips to nighttime, it's going to be a 5/5 trample, giving the rest of our board +1/+0, so a very big, very powerful card there. However, there's also Diver Scab, which is an excellent blue uncommon. 5 mana 3/5 that you can exploit a creature, so sacrifice a creature when it comes into play. If you do, target creature's owner puts it on top or bottom of their library, so a really big, really nice tempo play. Tempo style removal. This card is really excellent in the Disturb decks, or in any blue deck that picks up a couple of the Lantern Geists, the 1 mana card you can just disturb from your graveyard. I think I'm going to take Child of the Pack because we kind of already have a lot of cards that are going to synergize well with this. My biggest issue with the Diver Scab is we do not have any good sacrificial fodder for the exploit ability yet. So while Diver Scab looks like the more flexible card because it's just blue, so we could play it if we end up blue-green, blue-black, blue-red, the problem is we're going to need to make a lot more picks to support it. Cards that are specifically going to be nice to sacrifice early on, cards like Wretched Throng and Lantern Geist and stuff, so we need to hit specific cards. We need specific cards getting passed to us instead of just like forget anything in red or green, it's going to work well with the Child of the Pack because it's just a strong card. Plus the Child of the Pack being a 2/5 at face value already synergizes well with Dormant Grove and Flourishing Hunter. A lot of the things we're doing here if we end up in green-red, so I'm going to take the Child of the Pack here. But Diver Scab is definitely sweet as well. If these uncommons weren't in here, Traveling Minister is one of the best commons in the whole format, and Markov Waltzer is a really sweet Boros aggro uncommon. That being said, we're pretty far from white, so I don't even know if we would take those. It'd probably be Wretched Throng or Ceremonial Knife or something. I don't know. We're definitely taking Child of the Pack, though. Well, this is a bit awkward. Pack 2, pick 2. The strongest cards in this pack are Bleed Dry and Voice of the Blessed, and we're definitely not in the deck for Voice of the Blessed. But Bleed Dry we could take, then we have to kind of abandon the Child of the Pack dream and just end up being a regular Golgari mid-range kind of deck. The only card we're like confirmed to play would be the Reclusive Taxidermist, which is pretty solid. It's not a massive amount worse than Voice of the Blessed or Bleed Dry. It's a really nice mana dork that becomes a creature large enough to actually matter in combat later in the game, becoming a 4/4 when there are 4 or more creatures in grave. And it's a 2-mana mana dork. It taps for mana of any color. I think I'm going to take the Reclusive Taxidermist here. It's the only card that we're 100% going to play. If we take a Bleed Dry, we're still kind of jumping between being green-black or green-red. So I'm going to take the Reclusive Taxidermist. The only thing we're definitely playing, the only color we're definitely playing is green. So we'll just take the pretty solid green card over the very good black card. Well, not so sure how happy I am about that choice, because the best card in our colors here is the Diregraph Scavenger. This was another excellent black common. A 4-mana 2/3 Death Touch that exiles a card from a graveyard when it comes into play and drains your opponent for 2 life as well. Just really big impact immediately on hitting the board, stopping your opponent from getting back one of their cards in their graveyard and draining them for life, and then trading up into anything by being a Death Toucher. Diregraph Scavenger was a card that just really overperformed in this format. A lot better than it looks, and it already looks okay. So yeah, that's the best card in green, black, or red in this pack. Next best cards are like Massive Might or Sawblade Slinger, which are just fine. And then off color, there are some really good cards. Drogskull Infantry being a great disturb card, and Syncopate being an excellent counterspell, being able to exile things. I like Catgeist, a solid disturb card as well, but I think I'm just going to take Diregraph Scavenger here. Definitely the last pick of the Taxidermist didn't pay off totally, but we still get to play Taxidermist if we're green-black, so if we get pushed off of the green-red deck, it's still fine. Now the best card in this pack is a card we're really unlikely to be able to play. It's the Blood Tithe Harvester, excellent for a Rakdos Vampires deck. Black-red vampires with a lot of blood tokens. This is a 2-mana 3/2 that gives you a blood token, and you can sacrifice this later to use it as a removal spell. Just does so much stuff for only 2 mana. Really good card. However, the problem is, if we want to be black-red vampires, we've got like 8 cards so far, which is probably a little low for hopping into that strategy at this point in the draft. But I'll take a quick peek. Maybe it's something we can do here. No, we would have 6 cards towards being the Rakdos deck. Only one of them would be a creature that's cheap enough. That doesn't seem like it's going to happen. Probably supposed to take the just filler level green creature, Dawnheart Disciple here, so we can actually get some 2-drops into our deck, something that we'll definitely play. I think it's probably Dawnheart Disciple. Let's put our definitely getting played green cards back into the deck now. I think that's everything. And we really need to decide a strategy right now. I guess Reclusive Taxidermist can help us splash in this Child of the Pack, so we can just be green, black, splash red. And then this is what our deck looks like right now. So yeah, we can definitely use another 2-drop creature. That actually seems pretty fair to me. Just green, black, splash red is where we're trying to go. Couple fine cards here, Blood Fountain and Sawblade Slinger. Sawblade Slinger most games is just a 4-mana 4/3, which is definitely below rate and not great, but the games where your opponent has a good artifact or a solid zombie, you're always really happy with the card. They're just not a majority of the games. I think I'm just going to take Blood Fountain here. Solid late game bit of recursion, and you get a blood token immediately to start setting up your draws. But yeah, then late game being able to pick up a Diagraph Scavenger and something else is pretty nice. I think there's 3 cards I'm pretty high on in this pack. Obviously the white cards are excellent, but we missed that boat. But we've got Doomed Dissenter here, great 2-drop, really nice blocker, especially good if you have any cards to sacrifice it. We have Evolving Wilds, which is going to help us with our red splash, or we have another red card we could splash, the Mysterious Blood Illness, which is going to do 2 damage to each non-vampire creature, and we'll get a blood token. That can often be a one-sided Wrath, especially in our deck where we have 1/4s and 2/3s and 2/5s. So that's going to be really good if we end up against an aggro deck. And worst case scenario, we get a blood token out of it. We can just try to use it in combat as kind of a trick. So yeah, Dissenter, Evolving Wilds, and Vampire's Vengeance I think would all be great picks here. Doom Dissenter is going to be the most consistent. Doom Dissenter and Evolving Wilds would both be the most consistent cards. They're just always going to be good for us. Vampire's Vengeance is the highest potential upside, but sometimes we won't have the mana for it, and sometimes our opponent won't be that really aggressive deck, where it's just not going to do much. Plus, we don't really have any vampires to get super value out of it. Not even... If we can afford it, if we get a bunch of enough good cards in the next pack, we're not necessarily like definitely splashing Child of the Pack even, so I'm going to go Doomed Dissenter. I think that is a card that 100% is going to go in our deck. The other two, a little bit less likely, but Evolving Wilds is still... I guess we could play Evolving Wilds still if we're just green-black, even if we don't splash. Well, we've gotten past a pretty excellent green card, pick 7, the best green removal in the format. 3 mana to have a creature you control deal damage equal to its power to a creature you don't control, and the creature gets +2/+0 if it's night. So it's like a fight spell, but your creature is under no risk of taking damage. Easily the pick there. Alright, now we have Pointed Discussion, which is a fine card draw spell. It's essentially 4 mana to draw 3 cards, lose 2 life, and discard a card, because you're getting a blood token out of it if you spend the extra mana for it, which is kind of a big card draw spell. It's like Sift from previous draft formats, the blue and 3, draw 3, discard 1, so it's a pretty big draw spell. It plays pretty fine. Cartographer's Survey is too inconsistent, just trying to hit 2 lands off the top 7 and have them be good lands, and by the time you have 4 mana you don't need ramp that badly, so I don't think it's that card, and I'm pretty off the red splash here, especially when these are the quality red cards that we're seeing here. Some of these are good cards in the right deck, like Blood Hypnotist for the aggressive vampire deck with a lot of blood tokens, and Ancestral Anger for the blue-red spells deck, but neither of those are going to be good for our red splash deck or our green-red werewolves deck we could have ended up with. Alright, so now we've found a solid exploit card to make use of our Doomed Dissenter, as well as it's just a 5 mana 5/4. We don't have to exploit things, but any time that we have a creature weaker than our opponent's weakest creature, we just sack our creature to make them sack theirs as well. So Rot-Tide Gargantua is a super solid card. Mind Leech Ghoul is fine too. I don't think it's as good as the Gargantua though. And Traveling Minister is the best card in this pack, and I'm sad I'm not in white because we were seeing a lot of great white, just kind of everywhere. Another Doomed Dissenter or a Rot-Tide Gargantua, actually kind of a hard pick, to be honest. I like both of those quite a bit, and we don't have a lot of 2 mana cards right now. And Doomed Dissenter is one of the better ones for just cluttering up the board and making it so you survive till late game, which is I think what we want out of our 2-drops in this deck, because once we hit the late game we have big creatures, and hopefully we can get some more. I think I'm going to take Doomed Dissenter over the Rot-Tide Gargantua, and then it's just a Massive Might. Fine little combat trick we'll probably play. Cradle of Safety. You can always hold the Alt key if you get to the point where you're just drafting for your collection. If you hold down the Alt key on Windows, that'll tell you how much you have of everything. The checkmark means you have a full collection. Alright, pack 3, pick 1. What goodies do we have in store here? Flourishing Hunter. Already spoke my piece on this. Absolutely love it. And I would love to have a second copy, so that's going to be my pick here. I like Persistent Specimen and Rot-Tide Gargantua as well for this strategy, but Flourishing Hunter's like the number one, and I'm going to scoop it up. We did open an on-color rare, but unfortunately all three of our rares in this very bomb-heavy format have been completely unplayable and limited, so that is a really rough time. One of the biggest flaws in this format. So pack 3, pick 2 here. This is probably going to be a Sporeback Wolf for me. We could take a Grizzly Ritual, but at this point we now have a Grizzly Ritual, a Bleed Dry, and a Wolf Strike, as well as potentially using a Combat Trick, leveraging that as removal. Also have a sack ability on Gargantua. I just really like the Sporeback Wolf in the green-black High Toughness Matters deck. It's very good with Dormant Grove and stuff because it's a 2/4 during your turn and attacks in quite well. Just big fan of the card. I'm going to scoop it up here. So here we have Courier Bat, which is really good in the black-white decks. It would be okay in our deck. We don't have a lot of life gain, but if we ever end up with 9 mana and we get to Flourishing Hunter into this, that'll be good. I guess if we have 7 mana, we can Diregraph Scavenger into this, which is more likely, but you really want to be the black-white deck for that card, and with a couple copies of Traveling Minister, this card's really easy to trigger and just make it a very consistent Gravedigger effect. I think it's probably too inconsistent for our deck. So other than that, we just have 2 more very medium filler creatures, Apprentice Sharpshooter, Toxic Scorpion. I suppose Blood Servitor fills that role too. Just getting more creatures in here. We already have 5 2-mana creatures. I'll just go for triple Apprentice Sharpshooter. We'll just always have a 3-mana 1/4 reach on turn 3. You can't stop me from having them. This pack is pretty much empty for us. I don't think we have enough blood tokens in our deck to justify running a Ragged Recluse. It's just going to be a 2-mana 2/1 the vast majority of the time. And Moldgraph Millipede is just not a very good card. Pretty inconsistent at getting large at all. And we don't have enough Graveyard Recursion to justify it. We'd want a lot for this to be doing actually something, and we only have 1 Blood Fountain. And I guess there's Spiked Ripsaw, but I'm not a big fan of this either. But I guess out of all of it, I'll take a Spiked Ripsaw here. Again, I feel like I'd have to look back at this draft, but I really feel like the first pack and a half we were doing like a good job just trying to stay open and taking like what seemed to be the best cards in each pack, or at least close to them. And that kind of pushed us in the general green, blackish, reddish direction. And then now it's just all white all the time, just Traveling Ministers all over. But it just was too late to hop onto the white train at this point. Not a big fan of how this draft has panned out. But could make up for it in the gameplay if we do well there. Another pack of... There's a ton of cards in green and black in this pack. They're just not very good cards. Honestly, at this point, I'll just take an Evolving Wilds this time, if we still want to splash in this Child of the Pack. But the best card there was probably just getting like another Blood Fountain or another Massive Might, but neither of those would be incredible. Here a Diregraph Scavenger is pretty great, or another Grizzly Ritual is fine. Doom Dissenter also fine, but Diregraph Scavenger, probably the best one here. We'll scoop that up. Another Sporeback Wolf I'm pretty happy with. Again, we're just seeing Kindly Ancestors everywhere now. Another great white common. Now we have a Toxic Scorpion or a second Evolving Wilds. Second Evolving Wilds is going to make this splash for the Child of the Pack just incredibly easy. We just put a single mountain into the deck, so it really paid off there at least. 3 relatively filler cards here. Massive Might as a trick, Mind Leech Ghoul, and Persistent Specimen as creatures. Do have a tiny bit of exploit, but not enough for Persistent Specimen to do crazy stuff. We just have the 1 Gargantua. So let's just check our counts here. We only have 15 creatures still. 8 non-creatures to choose from already. I'll just take a random 2-mana 2/2 dork, so we have that option open. And we have a Millipede as an option. And potential Blood Servitor. And I'll just take the highest rarity card these last couple packs because I'm not going to play any of these last picks. So here's a look at the Golgari Toughness Matters deck we've ended up drafting here. With a little red splash, we get to cut one card out of here and call it a day, have a 17 land deck. Or I could cut 2 cards and go up to 18 lands, which wouldn't be bad because we've got 2 6-mana Flourishing Hunters and we have a little bit of blood tokens to help when we flood out. Don't think it's quite necessary to make this an 18 land deck, but it's an option. I'll probably cut this Spiked Ripsaw. Just never been a massive fan of that one. But guess we could cut a creature here. We don't need a million. I think it's going to be the Ripsaw for me, though. Our creatures are hopefully just straight up bigger than theirs already with our big drops. Or we could just cut this Mind Leech Ghoul, I guess. We do have double Doom Dissenter that work well to exploit with them. So I guess we could cut one of these Sporeback Wolves or this Dawnheart Disciple. Or we could cut one of these Sharpshooters. Got a lot of very filler level creatures to choose one to cut. I don't know, finding the time in your curve to play and equip an equipment, it's pretty rough, so if it doesn't have just like an incredibly high impact on the game, I'm not a big fan of it. +3/+3 is relatively high impact, though. But I feel like a lot of games in Limited, and in this format in particular, can come down to these positions where you and your opponent are going to keep trading your cards 1 for 1. So like you're in a top deck war, you both have like one creature on board, and then eventually you both find removal to kill the opponent's creature. And then all of a sudden if you top deck a Ripsaw, like it's not getting you another creature. So it can be a dead draw sometimes too. When it's good, it's great though. Never really know with my very last cut. But I'm gonna cut the Ripsaw here. Never have been a massive fan of it. And we'll roll with this Golgari Booty deck. Here we are with the final deck that we'll be playing with here. This is a Golgari deck with a lot of very defensive, high toughness creatures and some very big creatures to end the game. Double Flourishing Hunter, Child of the Pact, and Dormant Grove being our big win conditions. Solid bit of removal here with Bleed Dry, Wolf Strike, Grizzly Ritual, and a little combat trick of Massive Might, as well as the potential of trading off some Death Touchers or exploiting to get our opponent to sacrifice. So it seems like a solid kind of green-black mid-range deck with a red splash. I'll be entirely honest here, the drafting process did not go super well with this deck. White ended up being the most open color by far by the end of the last pack, and we were just seeing Traveling Ministers getting passed everywhere, so I'm a little unhappy. Unhappy with the colors that we ended up being in the draft, but we also didn't open up any bomb rares, which is a big aspect of this format, so that's pretty bad as well. But with all those things considered, with how rough the draft went in those ways, I think I'm pretty happy with kind of stumbling into this deck as kind of a backup plan, and just like, well, this is where we've ended up. It's not great, but it is far from as bad as it could be with how the draft went. So nice little, very average looking deck here. If I had to bet on the record, I would say like 3-3, just right in the middle. So we'll see how it does. Could go either way. Could 0-3 and scrub out against some powerful bombs, but we could also get a nice consistent run, just drawing our correct answers at the right times, curving out well, and maybe finding a 7-win run here. So see how it does as we head into round 1. Game 1, here we go. Turn 1, Sporeback Wolf. Turn 1, I wish. Turn 2, Sporeback Wolf. Then if we hit any of our 4 red sources, then we'll get a Child of the Pack eventually. We have 3 lands that can be a red source, 2 Evolving Wilds and a mountain, and then we have the 1 Reclusive Taxidermist, the creature that can give us that red mana as well. For the 1 red card we're splashing in, I'm already very worried. Our opponent is going to start with a Blood Tithe Harvester. At least we have drawn the red source here. We could Wolf Strike that immediately. I don't think it's worth it, but it might be worth it to hold up the Wolf Strike rather than play a Ghoul. Probably not. I'm just going to play the Ghoul. If they want to sacrifice the Blood Tithe Harvester to kill our Wolf or our Mind Leech Ghoul, that's fine. It's trading their 3/2 for our 2/2. It's probably better than trading our removal spell for their 3/2. Ooh, now they have a Desperate Farmer. That is really rough, because now they can sacrifice the Blood Tithe Harvester to kill one of our 2/2s and immediately flip the Desperate Farmer, and we can't respond and kill the farmer before it flips. Ooh, if they wait, Blood Tithe Harvester is a sorcery speed effect, so we can just kill the Harvester now before it becomes a 4/3 lifelinker. Which I am tempted to do now, even though I have a Child of the Pack. Very tempted to kill this before it becomes a 4/3 lifelink. So I'm actually going to wait here. Or attack with Sporeback Wolf and see if I get them to try to flip it. Oh no. And then I'm going to wait so that when they do something that's going to get one of their creatures killed, I can respond to that so that the Desperate Farmer can't flip. Because we can Wolf Strike at instant speed and try to really get them. Yeah. Yeah, this is going to be really nice. And now worst case scenario, because I'm going to target my Sporeback Wolf, the worst case scenario is they have to throw another removal spell at the creature they just targeted with removal. Okay, great. So now we've just knocked out both of their creatures. And then Edgar, Charmed Groom. This is what we're talking about when we call it a bomb-heavy format. A 4/4 gives all of their vampires +1/+1, and when it dies, return it to the battlefield as Edgar Markov's Coffin, which creates a 1/1 black and white vampire with lifelink and puts a counter on the coffin. Once they've done that 3 times, they just bring Edgar back, so it's a 4/4 that I can never get rid of. If I get rid of it, they're just going to start getting a bunch of 1/1s with lifelink. So Edgar's going to be very hard to beat. The only way we can get rid of it is by exiling it, so if we draw into our Bleed Dry, that would be excellent. It's pretty much our only way out of dealing with Edgar here. But yeah, Edgar is definitely a very rough time. Incredibly hard to deal with card. They're going to attack with Edgar, try to use a combat trick to kill our Child of the Pack, I suppose. No blocks here. Edgar doesn't have lifelink or anything, so we could try to outrace Edgar, I guess. If our opponent has no other action in their hand, then we'd have a shot to do that. It's a possibility, a pretty narrow possibility, but it can happen. Ragged Recluse. With a blood token on the board, 2 Ragged Recluses with a blood token, so they're both going to be 3/3s that drain us for life every time they attack. Because they didn't want to use the blood token yet, they just like the cards in their hand, I guess, quite a bit. So I can draw 2 here, or I can make a 2/2 off of Child of the Pack and play Quincy Harker. I feel like that's more value overall. But against Edgar, I do need to draw removal very quickly. So I could see the argument for pointed discussion here, but I am gonna just make the wolf. Get all the free cards I can. 4 mana make a 2/2, it's kind of like 4 mana draw a card. It's not digging us towards removal or anything, but it's giving us about a card's worth of value. If we can leverage these 2/2s into trading off into their 3/3s. Alright, I'm assuming the Recluses are going to flip now. if they drew like a basic land or something expendable. Edgar's coming in. I'm gonna have to get rid of their combat trick at some point, so I think I am going to block with our more expendable creatures and just see what happens. Maybe they just really want to start getting the 1/1 vampires with lifelink. Yeah, I suppose that's it. Well, rough. The fact that they attacked into my 2/5 last turn means I really think they have something. If they didn't have anything, then they know we could just bounce our 2/5 off of it. But they could also just be like next level playing me there, where they're like, they're not going to block with a 2/5 because it has such an important ability. They're not going to risk me having a combat trick. So our opponent could be big braiding us. Alright. So now the recluses are flipping, which is bad, and our packmate flipped, which is bad too. That is bad as well, because now we can't make another 2/2 right now. Ooh, wow, and these are not good draws. See what's coming up next. Alright. I guess we're passing the turn, and we're just blocking a 3/3. And we're just holding a 5/5 up, so unless they draw removal, they still can't attack in super well, at least. They've got removal, and we're pretty dead. Yeah. 1/4 is not going to do it. I can block both witches, get drained for life, take one from the 1/1. We get one more turn to draw into something. Yep, this is incredibly bad. We die the second an Odious Witch triggers next turn if we block like this, but whatever, I'm kind of just sending a message at this point. There's no blocks and draws that keep us alive, especially if they have a Diregraph Scavenger. Rough game. Pretty excellent stuff from our opponent's deck there. Very terrifying, the Edgar Charmgroom being a massive bomb, and then being able to flip 2 Odious Witches in one turn was insane. Diregraph Scavenger 2 and the removal to clear our card out of the way. Blood Tithe Harvester, very good deck from our opponent. It's going to be 0-1 to start off. Alright, we're on the play here. Keep this again. Evolving Wilds, turn 1 from our opponent, pull out a Plains. Do I want to start hitting, or do I want to start hitting first? And we can set up the Mind Leech Ghoul next turn. It's like, do I immediately want to exile a card from our hand? Exiling a card from their hand gets better the less cards they have in hand, so the later we do that, the better, actually. We can do it turn 4. We can play both of these in the same turn and just play Pointed Discussion this turn. Just start digging towards our red source. Playing against a red and white so far from our opponent. Draw 2 and we'll hit a Diregraph Scavenger and a Dawnheart Disciple. Solid, solid cards. Fearful Villagers to play from our opponent. 2/3 Menace. Becomes a 4/3 Menace at night, and we draw into a Dormant Grove. That'll be really good later, but for now... do I want to exile the card from their hand yet, or do I just want to set it up still? I think I just want to set up to be ready to do that in the future. Kind of like waiting on the Mind Leech Ghoul if I can. See if we can exile a big bomb from their hand or something. I'm going to spend a couple turns here probably on our 4-drops now. Magma Pummeler, a 2/2. Whenever it's dealt damage, deals that much damage to something else. That's fine. Okay, there's the Evolving Wilds for Child of the Pack. Love that. And then I really like Dormant Grove here on this board. Come on, Mountain. I'm trying to... There we go. Really like Dormant Grove on this board because we can use this to just keep making our board better and better and better over time. Slowly but surely. You could make Doom Dissenter a 2/2, which is kind of funny. I'm going to make Sporeback Wolf a 3/3. That way, if I need to flip the Dormant Grove, I have a creature that's big enough to immediately flip it next turn if they don't kill the Sporeback Wolf here. But I'd prefer to keep this unflipped as long as possible and just accrue a ton of value from it. Just start stacking up counters over time. If we can keep the board state under control, where our opponent can't attack in very well, we'll just be getting endless value from more and more +1/+1 counters. There goes our Sporeback Wolf. There goes my hero. Watch him as he goes. Here comes Magma Pummeler. I was going to say I would love Magma Pummeler to come in here, but just Vampire Slayer. I'll just take the trade. Evolving Wilds. Oops. Number 2. Removes another land from our deck. That's fine. Could play a Scavenger to get a big nasty Death Toucher on the board. I think I'm good to just play Child of the Pack here. Just pull out another Swamp, I suppose. Go to combats. Doom Dissenter can get bigger. I don't need a 3/6 Vigilance yet. Now Doomed Dissenter is big enough to trade into the Pummeler, and they won't have enough damage to kill the child afterward. Well, they can Valorous Stance the child. They have destroyed my child, and that should probably be illegal. Fearful Villager gets to get in now, because we only have one creature on the board. Fair enough. Alright, we've got 6 mana now, so we can Scavenger and Mind Leech Ghoul. I'm pretty okay with that. I'm actually going to go ahead and see if I can get 2 damage in with this Doom Dissenter before I sacrifice it. The answer is yes. And then we'll sacrifice it and just get an untapped 2/2 now. Our opponent has to exile a card from their hand now. They've only got 3 to choose from at this point. They're going to have to exile and Arm the Cathars. Little aggressive kind of overrun style effect. 3 creatures get +1/+1, +2/+2, and +3/+3. Markov Waltzer, that is definitely scary. 2 creatures get +1/+0 at the beginning of combat each turn. choose the Magma Pummeler here, they get to trade their Magma Pummeler into 2 of our 2/2s. If they send it in. They're not going to, just send in the Markov Waltzer. Apprentice Sharpshooter can keep that off of our face. Ooh, and a Wolf Strike. Really like the Wolf Strike here. Put the Sharpshooter up to 2/5 status. So it's very unlikely to get hurt blocking. And so again, it's going to be 1 counter away from flipping our Dormant Grove if we need to flip the Grove. Oh my god. Catilda, Dawnheart, Martyr. Well, we can kill whatever they target with Wolf Strike before that resolves. Give something flying, lifelink protection from vampires. Yeah, I'm just gonna kill that Waltzer before that resolves. And does that remain exiled? It does. Oh, that is so good for us. Wolf Strike at exactly the right time. Excellent draw. And we draw into Flourishing Hunter. I think now is when we just start beating down. Actually, I want to go training with the Sharpshooter here. They can Magma Pummeler one of our 2/2s. Or they can stack up Magma Pummeler to kill one of these creatures, but we still have the bigger board state, and we'll have a 3/6 Vigilance next turn. A 3/6 and our whole board will have Vigilance next turn. Just going to take it all and go down to 7. Perish Blade Trainee. A 1/2 with training, so it gets a +1/+1 counter when it attacks with a bigger creature. And there's the concession from our opponent, just 2 big creatures on our board. Not the number 2, but creatures that are too large for our opponent to deal with. That'll be 1 and 1 as we head into round 3. Keep this hand here. Definitely need to get some stuff for the middle of the curve, but Doom to Center early game and a couple Flourishing Hunters late are pretty great. Opponent drops a Pointed Discussion turn 3. We'll just go for our Apprentice Sharpshooter. We'll need to draw another Forest by turn 6 as well. It's a concern here. Red-black, Bloodcrazed Socialite. That is an excellent common. That thing hits like a truck. And I can't do anything about it. 3/3 Menace turns into a 5/5 Menace every time they sacrifice a blood token to its ability. Yeah, we're just gonna get hit by a semi-truck here. Sure thing, down to 15. Again, if we make it to 6 mana, we're gonna gain 4 life off of each Flourishing Hunter minimum. And there's Anya, Maid of Dishonor. Probably game. Whenever any vampire enters the battlefield under your control, they get a blood token, and for 2 mana they can sack a blood token or a creature to drain us for 2 life. So now they've got pretty much an endless fuel of blood tokens to keep the Socialite attacking as a 5/5 Menace, and to keep sacrificing to make us lose 2 more life. Guess we kind of have to play Scavenger here. So we have a Death Toucher to block with. So we can double block with Scavenger and Dissenter on their Menace card. I could also wait here. So I can Wolf Strike with a Death Touch creature on the board and try to get Anya off. It might be our best bet. Never mind, we no longer have a Death Toucher. A Braid, excellent cheap red removal. And a Desperate Farmer, so if we do manage to kill something, they'll have a 4/3 lifelinker now. And we can't kill anything. We can chump though and get a 2/2. Stopping 4 damage in the process. Now we can gain 4 life when we play our Flourishing Hunter. And it's big enough to block Anya. Or a flipped Desperate Farmer. I think I'm still not attacking here. It is tempting because I'd make the Sharpshooter a 2/5. But I don't think I can afford to not leave up extra blockers. Diagraph Scavenger is going to exile something from our grave, drain us for 2. Looks like at least they might not have removal for our Flourishing Hunter, so the second one's going to gain us 6, which is big. Ooh, Bleed Dry. Now we have a Bleed Dry and a Wolf Strike. But we're just going to play Flourishing Hunter first, get our life total nice and hearty here. Then we can start dealing with the must-be-killed creatures. Just 2 lands off their Reckless Impulse. So we need to kill Diagraph Scavenger and their Maid of Dishonor. Oh, I'll double block this. That might be wrong to do. I think I definitely don't trade a 6/6 into it. But is it better to trade my Sharpshooter and Zombie into it, or is it better to wait and use removal on it? I'll take the 2. I still am not sure if I'm going to spend removal on it. Oh, they're going to sacrifice it. Oh my god, because they top decked a Courier Bat. That is disgusting. So now they can just play it again anyway. It's got the mana to cast a Bleed Dry and a Wolf Strike. I think I can send both Hunters in here. They're just going to take 12. Alright. Definitely not dealing with Anya. Hold up Wolf Strike here. Blood Fountain. Well, we exiled Anya, and they have no creatures in grave now. But now whatever we Wolf Strike just comes back with Blood Fountain. Which is really bad for us when they have Diagraph Scavenger with an enter the battlefield effect to drain us for life. I guess they're out of creatures in grave, but still really bad for us with Scavenger because it's a Death Touch blocker for them. Can we win out of nowhere? If we just kill their lifelinker? They have 1 blocker with Death Touch, they block there, take 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We can't win unless we top deck another removal spell. We don't have another removal spell. We do, we have Grisly Ritual. Rot-Tide Gargantua would also win the game. I'm going to play to our outs here. I'm going to play to try to draw Grisly Ritual, Rot-Tide Gargantua, or Massive Might, because if we don't draw any of those 3, we're already just not going to win the game. Or Diagraph Scavenger. Right, because then they're just going to go up to 17. They're just going to go up to 17, and they're going to just Blood Fountain everything we killed back. So I think I killed Depraved Harvester. Well, if they're at 17, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, I guess I'm 1 damage off if I kill Diagraph Scavenger with Wolf Strike. instead. 6, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I don't know if it's better to kill the lifelinker or the diregraph scavenger. I think both leave us exactly as many outs. I don't think it matters. I think both leave us exactly as many outs, so I'm gonna kill the harvester here. I think they're the exact same outs too. Come on, top deck. Evolving Wilds is not an out. Well, they cracked the Blood Fountain to pick up the Harvester. Wait a second. Now we have a tiny shot of going for the 2-turn kill. Because we know they're not going to gain life on an ETB, so if we top deck removal next turn, it's possible they also leave the shields too far down. We need them to not top deck a Blood token. We attack with double Hunter and a 2-2. They have to block a Hunter. And we just play another Sharpshooter. Block there, take 3. Go to 2 and see what we top deck. I guess if I'm taking damage anyway, I attack all here. Alright. They have to trade with a 6/6 here. I'm so surprised they instantly cracked the Blood Fountain. But I'm so happy they did. Because instantly cracking the Blood Fountain means they don't get another ETB off of Diregraph Scavenger, which they would have if they cracked it in our end step. So fingers crossed, no top deck here. They just play the farmer. Curry Rat is not lethal, but it's good. They hit for 3 with Socialite for sure here. Let me see what we draw. Blood Fountain of our own. We have no creatures, and we have a Flourishing Hunter. Guess it gives us a blood token, but we have nothing to discard to it. Should have been holding on to a land. Block. We die if we don't play a creature here, so we actually just die because we can't afford a creature right now. We're dead, right? Unless I can force them to block with something. I guess if I attack with Flourishing Hunter, they have to block with something, but then they attack us with 3 creatures, and we only have 3 blockers, and 1 has Menace, so we still die. We have to hold 2 blockers back and get them to lose multiple. 5, 3. If one of my 3 mana creatures gets killed here somehow, then I guess I have a mild chance. Yeah, on board I'm just dying on the crackback. I need them to just decide to lose all of their creatures, I guess. For like no reason. They're going to lose 2 of them. Yep, so I am dead. Because I can't block both of those. Rough. We fought really hard in that game and almost won against the Anya deck. But Bloodcrazed Socialite with an Anya Batter side was pretty brutal. Their deck was really, really good. I'm surprised how close we got there. We had some outs. But yeah, excellent deck from our opponent again. A Braid, Diagraph, Anya, Bloodcrazed Socialites, the Courier Bats to draw as well. Yeah, if we held the land in hand there, we had one more opportunity to draw an out. Maybe it would have been there. It's the biggest misplay, I think. But their deck was phenomenal. 1 and 2, it'll be. Alright, turn 2. Quincy Harker ramping me up into my other stuff. We're going to have to Evolving Wilds for green here, though. It's not ideal if we end up drawing our Child of Night. Or not Child of Night, Child of the Pack. Blue-black from our opponent, double Lantern Bearer is quite the start for the blue-black deck. Blue-black decks are generally about exploit, so sacrificing their creatures for some kind of gain. And with Lantern Bearers, that is very easy to do since they have a great Lantern's Lift enchantment they can cast from the graveyard. And Binding Geist, wow, the very aggressive curve from our opponent's Disturb deck here. I'm pretty happy to just immediately Mind Leech Ghoul them with our Doom Dissenter. So they're already down to 3 cards. We get rid of a land here. It's not great, but they probably have some 5 or 6 mana cards in the deck. They could have a Grizzly Ritual or something, so could matter that we got rid of a land there. We have 5 mana now, so we drop a Sporeback Wolf. And just send in some 2/2s to trade into the Geist. The Geist gets to be cast as an aura later to make one of our creatures weaker. Geist is pretty good. All the Disturb cards are pretty great because they're almost all functioning as pretty much a 2-for-1. Where that traded into one of our creatures and made another one pretty much useless here since I'm only fighting against flyers. Well, I'd love to play Apprentice Sharpshooter, but it's probably better to put a 6/6 on the board and gain 4, but our opponent could have counters in blue. They didn't have any last turn, they had all their mana up, so just cast Hunter. Yeah, they don't have a counter. Hit for 2. Desperate Farmer. Been seeing a lot of those. There's our red source. Great draw. Quincy already works as a red source. I might leave this in hand to use with our blood tokens. Tempted to just kill the lifelinker here. So I'm going to do that, because if I don't kill the lifelinker, it's going to turn into a 4/3 eventually, and they can make it a 5/3 flying lifelink, which would be incredibly bad for us. Probably really greedy to discard our 1 non-creature red source here. Bleed Dry on our 6/6. Sad day. And we have a Blood Fountain as the draw, though. Oh yeah, but it's not in our graveyard, it's exiled. This is why Bleed Dry is excellent. And drop a Sharpshooter. Just attack with these. Play a Blood Fountain. I still don't know if I want to discard this mountain. I want to have that option, but... Ooh, Biolume Egg. Very good with exploit cards. When it gets sacrificed, they create a 4/4 Serpent that can sacrifice 2 islands to be unblockable. So they get really good value off that when they sacrifice it. Okay, now I can just very freely discard the forest that we've drawn, and any other green or black lands. Ooh, Diagraph Scavenger. We can get rid of their Disturb card from their grave, which is beautiful. Drain them for some life as well. I'm up at 17 here, so I'm going to start attacking with our Training Sharpshooter, just to make it a bit bigger. Not super worried about blocking the Lantern Bearer at 17 life now. And there's the concession from our opponent. Just got some bigger creatures on the board had the interaction we needed to stop their scarier, slightly bigger stuff from really popping off. And that'll be 2 and 2 now as we head into round 5. Really nice hand here. Mana-wise, a definite keep for me. Opponent is on the play. Starting with green and a turn 1 Snarling Wolf. I don't want to Massive Might my opponent's Snarling Wolf arena. Not until it's attacking, at least. Turn 2, they curve out with Dawnheart Disciple. Already getting a little sketchy. Opponent is curving out quite well. 1 drop into 2 drop. We'll see if they get a 3 drop as well. I think I just play Quincy here. Start working on our mana. Ramping up a little bit. Green and white is our opponent's color pair. Send them both in. We're hit for 3 down to 16. And a Griff Rider is the play. 2/1 flyer in the sky with training, so if they play another... If they play another human next turn, that could be a problem, but we have a Massive Might to trade into it. Thanks to Quincy Harker giving us the green mana we need. But yeah, a good curve for them here would be play a creature that makes Dawnheart Disciple a 3/3 and then attack with Disciple and Griff Rider. They could also just buff the Snarling Wolf, but then they're not committing more creatures to the board. Alright. Don't love how they still have 2 mana up here to potentially have their own trick against our Massive Might. They do have a trick, they kind of blow us out. Everything in my hand costs 4 mana and we have the mana for it all, so I'm actually going to use this combat trick to kill the wolf, I think. And if they use a combat trick to beat Quincy, it's probably more okay. Okay, so can we beat that with our Massive Might? They're just leading with the combat trick on the Griff Rider. 6 power, we can have 6 toughness. We can't have enough power. We can't beat that, but we can beat the wolf now. And we know we beat the wolf because they're tapped out. Alright, well. I guess they could still just immediately go for the combat trick. Oh, we've drawn another Sharpshooter. But I would almost rather play the Scavenger. I think I would. Probably gonna have to bleed dry on the Griff Rider at a later time. Panicked Bystander is a human, so it'll buff the Disciple. No attacks since we have a Death Toucher out. They'll just send in the flyer, not the 3/3 Disciple on the ground. Do still want to play this land. I have 6 mana cards in my deck. I can bleed dry and Doomed Dissenter now as well. It's kind of cool, but I think I'll just play a Doomed Dissenter and a Sharpshooter. Then that will hopefully just keep all of their attacks off of us. All of their creatures at bay. That's a no. They're going to spend another combat trick to kill another Sharpshooter. Sure are. Sporeback Wolf is the draw. Gives us a creature to start attacking them with. Really, really hate spending Bleed Dry on anything other than a Mega Bomb in this format because of how many bombs there are, but we're getting to that point. I think we just have to. So we will. Oh no. They have drawn into another flyer to replace it. This one with a lifelink. And they gain 3 life every time it hits us. That is incredibly annoying. Double block Scavenger to kill it. But that's it. Start sending Scavenger in, I guess. No mana to give lifelink, so they have to save the mana for something else. Guardian Paladin is the play. Drawn into Grizzly Ritual now. So we blow up the Heron in the sky. And we have 2 blood tokens. Maybe I shouldn't have played that land, but I like having 4 blockers up because we're down to 10 life now, and this is pretty big. Definitely not going to play any more lands after the 6th. Wow, and now they've got some kind of absurd combat trick again. That is rough. Not much I can do about that. Alright. It is only 1 combat trick, so all the other combat just happens, and now we're left with a 2-2 on our board to a 2-2 on theirs. Everything is balanced out, but we have blood tokens. They have more life, but again, we have the blood tokens for the card advantage. Wow. I would rather play Evolving Wilds than Forest here, so let's discard the Forest first. But I'm probably discarding both. Flourishing Hunter is the draw. Yeah, I'd rather discard this than play it. And I'd rather discard that than play it. Alright, Rot-Tide Gargantua Flourishing Hunter is huge. Those are some excellent cards. Just gonna play the Flourishing Hunter first, even though I could gain more life if I waited on it. Even though I could gain 4 instead of 2, I want to just start hitting them as hard as I can here while they're still top decking. It's a 4/4 Hook Hand Mariner. Could double block the Flourishing Hunter, I guess. But they do not want to. Now we play a Doom Dissenter, and I think I will kill their 2/2 Disciple. I could wait for a more opportune moment to try to get them to sack the 4/4, but I don't think it's worth it. They're just going to scoop them up. Our board is going to be a lot wider than theirs. We'll have 4 creatures against their 1/4/4. And that will be 3-2 now. At least a 50-50 run this time around. Which, I gotta say, is solid for this deck. Here we are now in round 6, solid curve. Probably gonna Evolving Wilds for the second black for Bleed Dry. Because we need the Bleed Dry mana earlier than we need the Flourishing Hunter mana. And I'm playing the Evolving Wilds turn 1 so that I know I can curve out the rest of the turns if I draw one of my sharpshooters or something. I guess I could have waited on the Evolving Wilds until turn 3 so I knew exactly which color I'd need the second source for. Because I could just play Sporeback Wolf turn 2, Mind Leech Ghoul turn 3, and a tapped land on turn 3. Opponent is on Red-Black Vampires with an excellent start, Voldaren Epicure into Wedding Invitation. We'll attack with the Wolf and then just play another 2/2 to block. Not going to hold up Wolf Strike yet. Sanguine Statuette from our opponent. They've definitely got the blood to go with it. 2 blood tokens already. Whenever they sacrifice one, that'll become a 3/3 until end of turn. Okay, drawn our 4th land. Excellent draw. Just looking for 2 more now. Don't have attacks against a 3/3. I guess I can attack with Sporeback Wolf. They'd have to double block to try to kill it. I definitely can't attack with the 2/2. since they can make the statuette a 3/3 out of nowhere. Another wedding invitation, so opponent's going to draw another card when it enters the battlefield. And they have those really set up for the late game. They can give 2 creatures unblockable and lifelink till end of turn later. Another Voldaren Epicure from our opponent, just a bunch of nice, cheap little value creatures so far. Tons of blood tokens for that statuette. Drawn the 5th land, 1 mana away from just jamming out some Flourishing Hunters. I think I want to save my removal. So I'm going to stop attacking with the Sporeback Wolf, because if they do make their statuette a 3/3 and block with an Epicure and a 3/3 statuette, I really don't want to spend a Wolf Strike on a 1/1 Epicure. To save my wolf, nor do I want my wolf to trade into a 1/1 Epicure. Because we have to be worried about what our opponent is digging for, what they're going to find, drawing so many cards out of their library. I'll take that 3 damage. I guess it's a vampire, so they can give it unblockable lifelink if they want. Nope, just hit us for 3. We're down to 15. They're down to 16. But again, they've got a lot of lifelink available later, whenever they want to crack the wedding invitations. Skulking Killer, just a 4/2. That's fine. Might kill that with a Wolf Strike. Probably not, though. Ooh, Dormant Grove is the draw. Kind of tapping out here, but fine with that. We've got a Bleed Dry and a Wolf Strike whenever we have mana. And if we draw 1 more land, we've got some Flourishing Hunters coming down, and by putting a counter on Sporeback Wolf, if the wolf is still around next turn, the Flourishing Hunter would gain us 5 life when it enters. 6 mana for our opponent now, and they played that land rather than discarding it to a blood token, so that has me all kinds of worried about what could be coming here. Voldaren Bloodcaster it is. Whenever it or another creature they control dies, they get a blood. When they create a blood token, if they have 5 or more, they transform it into a 3/3 that makes all of their blood tokens 2/2 bats. Slowly but surely. That is terrifying. But we can kill that pretty easily with Wolf Strike or Bleed Dry. Oh my god. Markov Retribution, though, is going to buff their entire field and kill our Sporeback Wolf. Now we're going to be forced into a trade with the Mind Leech Ghoul to not just like die here. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 to not go to 2 life. Things are actually looking really bad for us now. That's going to give them the next blood token for their Voldaren Bloodcaster. Or from their Voldaren Bloodcaster, which means they get to trigger the statuette next turn. I can play a Flourishing Hunter, but I can't gain any life with it. Which means I'll have 1 blocker to block that, and I'll take 2, 3, 4. Feels like our best bet. Oh wait, no, we'll just die because they have 2 wedding invitations. They attack for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 exactly. Because they can just make it unblockable statuette. We can't just play a hunter here. We have to Bleed Dry the Bloodcaster, I guess? Have to Bleed Dry something. But then we just die in like 2 swings. Well, things really flipped on us. The Markov Retribution was insane. Give like 5 creatures +1/+0 and kill one of our creatures off of 1 card. Immediately swung things very far in our opponent's direction. And we were just like a turn from stabilizing, really. But now we can't after that. We return from just starting to slam down Flourishing Hunters and gain a bunch of life. Ooh, they're not going to trigger the Sanguine Statuette here. Well, that's good. That's less damage to me. I wonder why, because it was lethal on board. I guess we will find out soon enough. I mean, we were completely untapped, so I guess they didn't want to just like run right into some kind of big trick. Magma Pummelers, their follow-up play. Yeah, that completely kills us. All we can do is play a single 6/6. If we block that, we die, and if we don't block it, we take 4 from that and 1 from the other creature. That is just completely game. I guess we play a 6/6 and a 3/6. I forgot our Dormant Grove can flip, but we were losing this round either way. Because we still don't get any life gain from the Flourishing Hunter, and they can just give a creature unblockable. 2 creatures unblockable. Yeah, I forgot about Dormant Grove. I wasn't taking that into account in my decision this turn or last turn, but even if I had remembered Dormant Grove, I think it still wouldn't be, Flourishing Hunter still wouldn't be the play. Because of their wedding invitations. I don't think it was the play last turn, we just hoped that we could bleed dry and they wouldn't have a solid follow-up, and now that they did have a solid follow-up, if we go for it, it doesn't matter because they still have both wedding invitations. Rough stuff. 3-3 though. Perfectly reasonable run for this kind of deck. As you can see from the games there are some very explosive things that can happen in this format. Not even necessarily with the rares. Cards like Markov's Retribution can be really insane as well and really flip things around. But I mean, our first 3 rounds, we played against Edgar, then we played against Catilda, then we played against Anya. Really how Crimson Vow tends to feel for the people who aren't super into the format. But there's a lot of cool stuff going on in the format, as you can see by the games that we didn't play against Super Bombs. We just played against a really good, like, blue-black Disturb deck, a green-white Training deck, and a red-black Vampires deck. In those rounds, there was a lot of good back-and-forth stuff. Even if we did get absolutely destroyed by a Markov's Retribution in the end, still a lot of decisions and stuff with so many, like, blood tokens lying around, so there's not too much flooding out in the format. And, you know, a lot of solid, kind of fun mechanics and stuff. Some graveyard stuff to do and some stuff to negate the graveyard strategy, some Diregraph Scavengers and Bleed Dries and all that. Solid time there. 3-3 run out of this Crimson Vow quick draft. About what I would expect out of this very average deck with no bombs, and we weren't in the most open colors in our draft pot either. So, solid run for how our deck ended up in the draft. But that is going to end today's video. As always, if you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to let the YouTube algorithm know to send some more of these videos to yourself and others. And once again, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena.